All right, guys, welcome back to the Tackle Corner, and today I have a quick video for you that if you're into kayak bass fishing or just kayak fishing in general, I think you'll find these items that I'm going to talk about are something that you've probably used, but maybe you haven't put a lot of thought into, or sometimes you don't bring them just because of you don't feel like it. But I'm going to talk about why each of these items is important. So these are 5 kayak fishing items that are something you shouldn't overlook, and you really got to be careful about what you're choosing for each of these. So number one I'm going to start off with is a net. And I'm sure most of you, if you have fished a kayak bass tournament, you've used a net, you've brought a net, you've watched a video of somebody kayak bass fishing, they have a net. Now, you'll also find that the kind of net varies greatly. I've seen everything from people using like a trout handle net, like where it doesn't even have like really much of an arm at all the way to something that the arm's longer than their entire midsection. And I will say this, there are a lot of different designs out there, but the most important part about choosing a net is choosing one that you're actually able to use. And a lot of that's going to be just to do with how tall you are. That's probably the biggest thing I would say. If you're someone with long arms, it's okay to get a longer handle net, because you can always go up and down on the net to where you want to grab it to give yourself the best leverage. I use a net that has a particularly long handle, and I've found that I've been able to net fish a lot easier than when I used a short handle net. And the other thing is, when you're using a longer handle net, you don't have to get the fish as close to your kayak. Sometimes with that short handle net, you're going to have to dip over a little more to net it. And that can lead you to actually tumbling in, and I have a few people that could probably attest to that. When you have a short handle net, you are more likely to lean. When I have that longer handle net, I can kind of go like this, and I don't really have to lean over to net that fish. Next item is going to be kind of a simple one. This is more about traveling to and from, and that is rod sleeve covers. I've seen people take these out in the water. I don't think that's absolutely necessary. There's nothing wrong with it. But what I do find is this keeps your rods safe when they're bumping around in the back of your truck or your car, and it makes it less likely for you to get scratches, dings, and certainly less likely to break them. And also, it's just kind of like an ease of use thing. When you're going to grab your rods, it makes it easier, I've found, to grab them all in one swoop, and you're less likely to damage them. So that's just something that you really shouldn't overlook that, and they're not expensive, and half the time when you buy a rod, they send one with it, or they'll throw it in for dirt cheap. So always use them. I have so many of them. I probably have more than I have rods, which is saying something, but it's something that you really don't want to forget about. Next big one is your storage, and in particular, you want waterproof storage. I used to be someone that took out a milk crate that didn't have waterproof storage, so I tried to bring stuff like where I actually kept my lures to be watertight. So a lot of people will bring out like Plano boxes and things of that nature, but something I switched to last year, putting in my Yak Tech black pack, was the KVD speed bags. Those things zip completely, they're watertight, and you can put a lot of lures in those, and they stack so nicely inside of your device that wherever you're using to carry on the water, that I've been able to fit so many more lures than I used to. And it fits all nicely like Jenga in the inside of it. I even keep my hard tackle boxes in a bigger version of that bag. I saw a couple people using them, and I was intrigued, and ever since then, it's made managing my tackle on the water so much better than what I used to do. So watertight, waterproof containers for your lures, because one thing that you kind of forget is that most of your lures aren't actually waterproof, and they will rust if they do get wet. Because you think about when you're fishing, you're not leaving the lure sit in for 3 days or over the weekend or a week. If you find a lure in the water that someone else lost, a lot of times it's already starting to rust, depending on what kind of metal it's made out of. Next up, something else you want to have in the kayak that a lot of people forget to bring, and it's super important that you do, is extra fishing line. I've had a couple tournaments where this burned me not having it, specifically for fishing with soft plastics on light line when I was using a braid to floral leader. I didn't bring any extra leader line. And when how I was fishing, it required it just for how clear the place was. And as soon as I lost that leader, I was like, I didn't braid any extra line. And I knew I wasn't gonna do as well on the presentation. Sure enough, I didn't catch any more fish in that presentation the rest of the day, just because of the lack of leader line. So it's not gonna hurt you to throw in one of your spools that maybe doesn't have enough line to spool a reel. I usually keep like 15 or 12 pound fluorocarbon as like just to have on my kayak. I leave it in there, and it's something that's really helpful for me. And lastly, this one's kind of a random one, but I have found that if you ignore it, you're gonna hate yourself for it later. And that is something to cut your line with when you really need to. And there's so many different things that people use. I've seen everything from toenail clippers to these little guys you've probably seen before. They're all they are is just a cut line. Your best bet is going to be braid scissors. That is something I always have, because you never know, and maybe even an emergency where you need to cut that line. Maybe it's a braid, it's got tangled up, and you're in a bad situation, you need to cut that line fast. Certain things aren't going to do the job, especially with those tougher lines out there. So you always want to have a pair of braid scissors or something like that that is strong, it's going to cut through. So these are 5 items that, like I said, none of these you were actually even really fishing with. These are things you're bringing with you or taking with you to the lake or the river before you go kayak fishing. But to me, it's something that you really shouldn't forget about, because all of these things will make your day better, and none of them are going to make your day worse, especially if you don't have anything to replace it with you. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be making a couple more of these kind of quick tip videos up until I can get out fishing again. It kind of depends when that's going to be. I might be able to get out ice fishing in a few weeks. If I do, you'll see the video. And then I got a couple things cooking for early spring. Got a big trip planned. I'll talk more about that probably next time once I got all the details finished out. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.